All right, what's going on, y'all? Hope y'all doing well out there. So, if you're a photographer or videographer that gets asked to do a shoot or a project for exposure, or they offer you some lowball price like $50, $100, $200, some crap like that, this video is for you. So, I had a situation that happened like a week ago. I was down in Atlanta, and I was down there shooting some POV video for a project of mine that I've been doing for like 10 years now. I often photograph graffiti, especially down in the Atlanta area, because if you guys don't know, I graduated from Georgia State. So I do often do graffiti, like continuation of my graffiti project, basically. I go down there, I shoot photos of Krog Street, and if you guys don't know what that is, if you ever go to Atlanta, go to Krog Street Tunnel. You can put it in Google Maps or Apple Maps, wherever. Go down there, there's a long graffiti wall. A lot of artwork out there. So I like keeping the catalog over the past 10 years, seeing how it changes over time. So as I'm walking, I get on the belt line after that. And I'm like headed down, just, catching some street photography shots. And somebody stops me and they ask me, can I cover their event with some photos and videos real quick? They know it was impromptu, but they were like, hey, I'll shoot you like a $50 to $100. Now, mind you, I gave them my card and I said, you can scan, this barcode and basically go to my website. Now, nothing on my website screams $50 at all. Like, I've been in shows, I do exhibitions and that. So I'm like, there's nothing about what I do that screams $50. So let me talk to y'all about knowing your value. All right, y'all want to remember that your skills are an asset, not a favor. You don't owe anybody anything. You don't have to do any favors to anybody. You got to think about all the years that you put in to do photography. I've been shooting since I was 8 years old. So that's a long period of time. I'm not 8 years old, obviously. So you got to think about that. You got to think about the cost of your gear that you purchased. You gotta think about that Adobe subscription. And like I said, being offered $50 to $100, that's barely gonna cover Adobe subscription. So for a month, 1 month. So you gotta think about that. You gotta think about all the time it's gonna take you to edit those photos. It's gonna take you that time to actually shoot the content or take pictures of the photos. So you gotta think about all that when you're having those thoughts. And you gotta remember, you're building legacies. Your photos and videos sell products, and you're creating memories, and you're building brand legacy. So you can't really forget about all those aspects of what you do. Another thing you gotta think about is exposure does not pay the bills. I had this conversation with people all the time. People will offer you exposure in exchange for your services. Now, exposure does not pay the bills. When your rent's due, telling somebody that, hey, I got this brand or this person to give me some exposure, like that is not going to be a good excuse for them not to get their money. So we got to think about that, man. You can't pay your Adobe subscription. That's not going to help you buy another piece of gear. It's not going to help you take that class or go to that conference to enhance your skills. And it's not going to work. It's just not. And I know a lot of content creators tell you go out there, work for free and this and that. But, if that worked for them, hey, that's good. But I'd never say don't go out there just doing stuff for free. If you're not confident in your skills in the beginning, hey, you may be the one that takes that $50 to, shoot some photos and some video. But be aware of, the price that you're paying on the other end for editing and things like that. You got to think about that. Being asked to do something for exposure really benefits the person that's asking more than it does the creator. I don't care how many times it happens, exposure and shout outs and tags on Instagram and all these other platforms is not going to help you as far as getting paid and paying your bills. So think about that. All right, guys, you got to also think that price reflects value, not time. And for me, I'm not the cheapest photographer or videographer that you're gonna find. Giving me a lowball price like $50, $100, something like that, that's almost an insult to me. but I understand people don't really know what goes into what we do. So sometimes you got to educate them on, what it takes to, make a good photo, what it takes to make a good video. And a lot of times that's, pre-production, that's planning, talking about, what the client needs, what they expect, things like that. Actually shooting, figuring out location, actually doing the work of shooting the photos, things like that. Then you go to the revision stage where, maybe the client wants to change some things in the video. Maybe they want to, make the edit a little different, things like that. So you get that in there. And then also you got to think about usage rights. I know a lot of people don't talk about that, usage rights and things like that, or licensing out their content, but that's what all the big dogs do. They license out content. They, you have certain usage rights. And I've had times where like a global brand was trying to get me to do some photos for them, and they wanted all the photos, and they asked to get photos in perpetuity for usage. And that's basically saying that whatever they pay me for the photos, that's it, and then they can use them forever, 100 or 1,000 years from now. And you gotta think about that. It's like really like not worth giving somebody that kind of usage. And a lot of times I know photographers and videographers don't talk about this with their clients or put in their contracts and things like that, but you should be doing contracts. You should be talking about usage. And you also got to think about your expertise. 9 times out of 10, when a client wants something done as far as photos or content, they may have a little bit of an idea, but for the most part, they don't know what they want to do. They want you to figure that out. So you got to charge for that expertise. And that's just something that I know a lot of photographers do not realize or think about, especially younger ones that really don't know the game. When I tell a lot of my buddies about this stuff, they think I'm mean or I'm too strict and stuff like that, but this stuff matters, especially if something happens and you end up getting in a lawsuit or something like that. You need a contract, you need laid out usage rights, things like that. So all this stuff goes into play when talking about your value. Oh, and one more thing about, having boundaries. When you have boundaries, it earns you respect. You might think like certain people just don't want to deal with you or anything, but some people will actually respect that. I had a brand recently that reached out to me, and we're going to be collabing on something pretty soon. You guys will see that in the next few videos. But they slipped in the email that they wanted an extra little something, and I was like, that's outside the parameter of what we talked about. So that'll be addendum to whatever contract we got going on. So you guys got to think about that. But they respected the fact that I said that, and they opted to, not go forward with doing the extra piece of content that they wanted, but they earn their respect. So you got to think about that, and also that protects your work. All right, y'all. This next one is every client isn't your client. All right, I see this all the time, and I always try to tell people, stop chasing these small opportunities that are undercutting your value. You gotta remember, if the client can't afford you, that's not your client, and that's a red flag. And don't be afraid of that fear of missing out or anything like that. If they can't afford you in the price that you're willing to charge, then that's not your client. Find another client. All right, if you guys are a little shaky on that whole everybody isn't your client thing, you got to remember that your work creates results. Like I said before, you help build brands, you help build legacies, you help families keep memories. So you got to remember that when you're out here making these photos and these videos. And don't get too shy of knowing that every person isn't your client. Confidence isn't a bad thing. Confidence is key in the game, actually. And you should never be ashamed of knowing your value. The next thing that was leading into this was confidence, man. Confidence is part of the job. You got to be confident in your skills and what you can do. And if you guys, pay attention to Deion Sanders, he said, don't let my confidence be seen as arrogance. You just, got to know what your value is and what you bring to the table. There's nothing wrong with that. And you got to think like your confidence most of the time is going to speak to your self-worth. If you feel like you're not worth it and stuff like that, personally, you're probably going to project that in your professional life, and you don't want to do that. So you want to make sure, keep your confidence high, keep building on your skills. All right, y'all, if you've been playing small ball, as we like to call it, this is your wake-up call to raise your rates, raise your standards, know your value. Don't sit out here doing work for pennies on a dollar and somebody's getting paid thousands of dollars for it. Don't do it. All right? Get out here, keep working on your craft, and be cognizant of the fact that you may suck, especially if you're a beginner. Your skills might not be of much value to another person, so you gotta keep that in mind as well. I'm maybe not as good as I think I am, but if you've been doing it for a while, you've done projects, you've done photos, you've been in exhibitions, things like that, you know what you're working with. Don't sit there and just keep yourself undervalued when you're working with clients. Raise those rates up, raise those standards. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to say, well, you trying to offer me $250 for a photo shoot? Not my client. Like, you gotta think about things like that. And have confidence in yourself and have self-worth. So, as always, if you guys like this video, go ahead, subscribe. And I appreciate you guys watching this video. Recently, I just started in November putting together videos and putting them out on YouTube. Granted, it's been a process and it is a bit of work. It's not as easy as people think it is, but I appreciate everybody that subscribe. I'm up to like 50 something subscribers, right? Like 55 subscribers right now. And that's pretty dope for me just starting putting out videos in November. And I'm getting like hundreds of views on some of the videos. So I appreciate that, y'all. But anyway, if you have an experience like this, or experience where you felt like somebody didn't value you, or you felt like you need to raise your value to other people, drop it in the comments. Let us know what's going on. Let's have a conversation. Your boy ain't never afraid to talk. You talk to me, I'll talk back. But anyway, if y'all like this video, check out these other videos, and I'll check y'all next time. Peace.